Hello, my booktube friends. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelly, and today I am giving an Epistolary January update, as well as updating you on other books that I have finished thus far in the January New Year. First of all, we're going to talk about 84 Charing Cross Road by Helene Hanff. This is the first book I finished, thanks in part to the wonderful read-along that Jen's Reading Life hosted on her channel. And I really just can't completely describe what this book meant to me. I have a feeling that it is going to be on at least my favorite nonfiction books of the year, if not one of my very top books of the year. I bet it will make it in the top 10. It's a nonfiction story. It is completely epistolary letter writing back and forth between Helene Hanff, the author of this, and who compiled the letters. She was wanting to get some very hard to get classic books, used books, and so she writes to this bookstore on 84 Charing Cross Road, and she ends up corresponding with an employee named Frank Noel, and he is just very professional and very kind and very accommodating, and she is just a little bit American spirited, sassy back to him. And he always calls her Ms. or whatever, and eventually by the end he's calling her by her first name. We do get other characters from the bookstore and occasionally even Frank's wife writing her letters, and she sends them things that are so hard for them to still get in England after World War II. This is post-World War II. I think I neglected to say that. And she just sends things that they can't get easily because they are still on some very serious restrictions that the United States did not have to deal with. So it was just so touching, so beautiful. The ending was so incredibly bittersweet to me, and it's just a story about connection and people and why our relationships matter and how books bring us together. I loved it. I don't think I could even tell you how much I loved it. The next book that I finished was The Christmas Appeal by Janet Hallet, and this is a little sequel Christmas novella that I read earlier within the 12 Days of Christmas. We have a murder mystery in this. So the first one was a lot better, just the appeal. If you're American, we would say fundraiser, most likely. So these are, fundraiser type things that are happening. The first book, it was a little girl that had cancer that they were raising money for, and there's a murder that is involved in the story at some point. We're only getting emails and texts through the correspondence, and you're also hearing from law enforcement who are wondering how things went wrong. So the theater group, there's such groups of characters. They're unique, and then they're raising money in the story for the church where they perform. The roof has a major leak problem, and there's a murder, of course, and you have but this one just felt a little bit flat compared to the original. It wasn't quite as intriguing. It wasn't quite as funny. It was okay. It was worth a read. Might be a good Christmas little mystery to pick up next year if you're interested, but it wasn't my favorite of all time by any means. And then next, my daughter and I, she's 15 years old, throughout a lot of December and going into January, we were reading the Enchanted Sonata by Heather Dixon. This is a Nutcracker retelling, and this is one of my favorite ones that I think I have read. So a lot of this is dealing with music. So Clara is in the Victorian regular world, and the Nutcracker is pulled out by fairies to her world. The rats and a very specific person using music to turn children into toys has come to their land, and so Clara is pulled into this land to try to help because of her musical skill and prowess. Now, the character of Clara in here, she is very silly in some ways. She has a silly crush. She has very little girl ideals. And first that kind of irritated my daughter and I, but it actually worked with the story. So keep going. We just really love the musical references and themes of the story. So next year I should probably just do a video on the Nutcracker retellings I've read. All right, the next book that I finished was The Ranger's Apprentice with my son, who is 13. We read this before bedtime, and it is really good. The first one is The Ruins of Gorlin, and we have a little boy who he has been under the protection of a baron since his birth. We really know that his mother has died in childbirth, but we don't know who she is or the father was. We do know he was a soldier. He was left with a note that said he was a hero. And so he's been raised with other orphans that are under the baron's protection. It's time for them all to become apprentices. And he would love to go to battle school because he knows his dad was a soldier, but he's little and that doesn't really work. So he is maybe going to become a ranger's apprentice. He might have the sneaking and the skills to do that. And he has a mentor that is so interesting and funny. And we just really resonated with the story and this little boy's feeling of not belonging and finding belonging and you know, friendships coming out of relationships that were strained. It was really a nice story. I would say that even though this may be targeted more to middle grade, this is a little bit more YA in nature, I would say. All right, the next one that I finished was A Gentleman in Moscow, and did I already read my favorite book of the year? Oh my gosh, this is by Amor Towles. Now, if you want a very heavily plot-driven book, this may not be for you. This is a very character-driven story. I will say the plot does pick up big time towards the end, but we have a man who, during the time of the Bolshevik takeover, he is Count Rostov, and he came back to help his grandmother get out of Russia when the nobility began being in big trouble being there. And he stayed, and he was sentenced to live his life in the Metropole Hotel. So he, even though this is unfortunate that he's stuck in one place for the rest of his life, he does understand that he's lucky. He's in a hotel. He's moved out of his normal quarters and he's kind of put off to the side, but he makes the best of it. He still has the barbershop. He still has, you know, the restaurants, and it's about him and him making the best of things and understanding that life is often what we make of it. And it's the relationships we have with the people. He befriends a little girl, and that turns into a much deeper plot point later in the book that I don't want to give away. He has relationships with like the wait staff, and that leads to him having a job as a waiter eventually. He has a friend that's a poet, and that is a plot point in why he ended up not being murdered and got to stay in the Metropole. I just absolutely loved this book. I can't even tell you now. It was for my in-person book club for Russia. We have our meeting tonight, and I do know that some people DNF'd it and did not like it. So I know it's not everyone's cup of tea, but it's my cup of tea for sure and certain. And it's a book that will stay with me until the day I die. So, I mean, my January isn't going fabulously in many other ways, but in my reading life, it is going extraordinarily well. All right, the last book that I have finished so far in January is Wired Love Why is the name of the author escaping me? I will, of course, put the picture up and put it in the description box. But this is a tale of, we've got the two characters that are talking to each other on the wire, and they're really getting a deep friendship and a connection. But if they meet in real life, what will they think of each other? And there's a good best friend of the young lady, and it's just very sweet. There is a little bit of the miscommunication trope in there that irritates me, but I was willing to work with it. It was really cute. Anne had known about this book, so this, of course, fits our telegram prompt. So anything that's not of the written word, you could do emails, texts, things like that as an epistolary novel. So this with that, of course, also for me, the Christmas Appeal by Janet Hallet, since that is also all emails and text, fits that prompt. So yeah, it was absolutely amazingly wonderful. Can't say enough good things about it as well. So yay! A great start to my new year with reading, and I hope you are having as much success as I. Read a lot. Bye-bye.